Deanna Hansen, great to connect with you. And this is such an important topic, understanding the role of the fascia and how that plays into all forms of chronic inflammation and particularly into pain syndromes as well. So let's start with really understanding what fascia are.
And thank you so much, first of all, for having me
here. Or
here.
what fascia is. I don't even know how to exactly ask that question.
So I've spent over 60,000 hours diving into the fascia system with my hands on other people's bodies and my own. And I do feel I have a bit of a different perspective on the fascia system as a result of this. So essentially, fascia is this beautiful connective tissue that connects every single one of our trillion cells together. It's the communication system between all cells. And it's really here to provide both stability and mobility for the body. The ultimate goal is that there's optimal space in and around every cell, because if there's space, there's ease of flow of nutrients into the cells, as well as the removal of waste and toxins away from the cells. So that's really the goal of the fascia, primarily comprised of collagen and elastin. Again, it creates both the stability and the mobility. The challenge is we are constantly being afflicted with external forces on the body, gravity being, of course, the one most prominent that's continually pulling us down toward the earth. And we're not balanced in our body. We're not symmetrical. We're dominant on one side. So we don't simply compress linearly. We literally wind down over time in one direction or another, depending on a number of factors. So what happens with the fascia system is as our body starts tipping over, we start having a migration of collagen to the areas where we need to build up false walls and false floors in the body. Otherwise, we tip over. So this creates adhesions forming and gripping to anything in its pathway, ultimately on the bone, and can grip with a force of up to 2,000 pounds per square inch, holding the body out of alignment in these negative fascia patterns. So this creates stagnancy in the body. It blocks blood and oxygen flow and nutrients from entering the cells, as well as keeps the areas stagnant. And that attracts, of course, dis-ease in the body, parasites, bacteria, fungus, whatever. Basically, we create these scenarios, though, for the fascia system to become clogged with debris, with waste, with toxins. And then this creates dis-ease, pain, and aging as we understand it in the body, as well as impacts our size and shape.
Yeah, so important. And so how does somebody end up getting fascial adhesions? What are like some of the major risk factors?
Well, basically, we have this beautiful body that if we actually knew how to use it properly, we could really go through time and have a very different perspective on what aging looks like. So we have this diaphragm muscle, the foundation of the rib cage, that when it's working properly, it moves up and down in the body. And when we exhale, it lifts. So it's basically the counter force to gravity. And also there is all of this wonderful research now coming out. I'm so grateful. I love the Breath book by James Nestor. He talks a lot about the exhale as well as the carbon dioxide oxygen balance in the body. But if our body is working as it's designed, we have the foundations, we have the breath to keep that space within the body. However, if we're not conscious of posture and breath, and most people aren't, simply because we really weren't trained to be conscious of how to use the body properly. We play these sports that are so asymmetrical, and that creates asymmetries in the body. It creates a winding of the fascia and a tipping over of the body. So then we ultimately have to have these counterbalances created, which again is this migration of the collagen away from the balance. So imagine walking a 120-pound German Shepherd that's really well trained. You've got it on the leash beside you, and there's no pull on your body. However, now imagine the same massive dog yanking on your body constantly. So these are in the moment forces, but the body, the equal and opposite side of the body, is going to contract so that we don't land flat on our face. Now, if this is a constant forming slow version of that, which is really what happens over time with gravity and unconscious living, the body is constantly developing these false walls and false floors to stop us from tipping over. But again, that migration of the collagen, which is what the adhesions are made of, which basically, same as scar tissue, they block blood and oxygen flow. They hold us in these negative holding patterns. And whenever I'm looking at a body I always look down at the feet, the foundation first, because we have these beautiful structures that are designed to allow us to move through life and support our body weight and all the different landscapes that we walk on. However, most people don't recognize how to support their structure. So we end up pancaking the feet. And I always look at one foot is always going to act like a flat tire. It's going to be driving away from the body. And then the other side is going to have to anchor again to stop us from tipping over. So through our lifetime, with whatever we're doing, whether we play sports, what our job is, if we're sitting in front of a computer slouched all day, if we're doing manual labor, playing an instrument, all of these things add up to create the fascia system that we have today, including injuries, surgeries, as well as other stresses, even in relationship. It all impacts how we breathe, and how we breathe is really the key. Because if we're breathing optimally with this beautiful muscle, we are feeding the cells properly and keeping the body clean. However, when the diaphragm becomes compromised and pain, fear, and stress cause you to reactively hold the breath, we start breathing through the muscles of the upper chest. And then we really limit the amount of toxins we can remove from that exhale, as well as the amount of oxygen we can bring in from the inhale. So the body becomes thick and dense and heavy and congested. Think of blowing up a balloon. It's nice and full and it glows, almost defying gravity. And then take half the air out of the balloon and it becomes wrinkled, and you can have dust and debris caught in the creases and it becomes heavy and dense. That's what the body does over time when we don't have that optimal breath.
And what does a healthy respiration cycle look like? If you're watching somebody, observing them, what are you looking for with their respiration cycle?
We want to see the belly moving first. So if we're just in a relaxed state, really the breath should be coming from the belly. If you see somebody breathing, we don't want to see that chest rising unless we're doing strenuous activity. And then that's that last phase of the breath that should be happening. Yet many people at least, are really using this area to breathe from all the time. So again, we're very depleted in what we're able to do. At the base of the lungs is where the majority of the oxygen receptor sites reside. So if we're breathing these shallow, rapid breaths, we're not pulling the air deeply enough into the lungs for optimal absorption or optimal removal of that carbon dioxide. And in fact,
is there like a certain amount of breaths, or do you count the amount of breaths too? Because I imagine if people are doing short, shallow breaths, they're probably taking more, they probably have more respiration cycles per minute than somebody who's taking more of a deeper, with their belly, and the diaphragm kind of pulling all the way down. I would imagine it would be less breaths per minute.
Absolutely. And in fact, in that breath book, they were saying that the optimal amount of breath is 5.5 seconds for inhale and exhale, equaling 5.5 breaths per minute, where many people are probably breathing, every couple of seconds they're going through that respiration.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. And that diaphragm plays such an important role. I know I've interviewed somebody else recently about pelvic floor, right? And how, when there's adhesions in the fascia and the pelvic floor, you're not going to, it's harder to breathe, right? And so breaking up those adhesions can be super helpful. And so many women are dealing with pelvic floor issues. So
and I
that's
really
a big
see that as
factor.
a function of how the fascia will wrap around the calves and the feet. Because whenever I'm looking at a body, I'm always looking for the cause sites to the pain and issue site, and they're at a distance. And because the diaphragm is this plate of muscle in the center of the body, when it's moving up and down, again, it's creating a beautiful massage to all the abdominal organs, the heart and the lungs. However, if it's not, it's the extremities that are going to become the coldest because they're the furthest from the engine. So if you have, say, low back pain and you have all these wonderful treatments on your low back, but then you stand up and you start walking and you fall back into that negative fascial pattern, then the cause sites haven't been addressed. And I always say that the limbs are like the tent poles. When we have tent poles firmly in the ground, your tent is nice and taut and all the contents inside the tent are safe. However, when the limbs don't have that structure and stability, that impacts what's going on in the core of the body, and it creates that twisting. And that twisting, basically, here's your diaphragm, of course, it's a plate moving up and down. And it's working properly. Again, we're getting this beautiful massage. When we collapse, the muscle is going into a twist and a holding pattern, again, with a force of up to 2,000 pounds per square inch. So even if you're doing breathing exercises, to be able to release that muscle, to allow it to optimally function requires an ability to get those adhesions to melt from the ribs so that we can activate more of the diaphragm.
Yeah. So how do we go about starting to release the fascia?
So fascia decompression. So basically we compress over time. As we get older, we become shorter and wider typically. So what we want to do is we want to go backward through time in the tissue. So adhesions basically, the tissue becomes colder. And I live in Winnipeg. So
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with, if you go outside and it's -30 and you try to start your car, A, it might not start. B, if it does, you might have to let it warm up for 30 minutes or so before you can drive it. Where if you're in a nice warm place like Florida, you can start the car right away and you can just go on your way. So if people haven't been breathing properly over time, their body essentially is a lot colder in general. And these adhesions basically, it's frozen tissue. And you can feel that. People's feet feel cold, their calves feel really dense. We shouldn't have dense tissue when it's relaxed. It should be nice and fluid and malleable. So what we want to do is we want to start creating heat. And there's ways we can do that. So the first thing, your diaphragm is like the body's furnace. I live in a 30-story building. And if it's -30 outside and I only have a space heater, I can heat one room in my apartment. You turn on the building's furnace, now I can heat the entire building. So bringing the breath down to the diaphragm is number one, because we want to turn on that really powerful engine, this muscle. And then the other thing is through the process of pressure over time. And what we do with our process of block therapy, as an example, we have people lie throughout the entire body in positions, and you're lying on a tool for a minimum of 3 minutes, because pressure over time creates heat. It creates blood flow. So when you combine pressure over time with that diaphragmatic breath, you're heating the body from the inside as well as the outside. And then when you're in position, we teach you how to navigate not on the surface, but through the layers of fascia. Kind of the difference between if you're in a boat on the ocean or going deep sea diving. We want a deep sea dive because the adhesions, again, will grip and adhere to bone with that 2,000 pound per square inch force. So that's where we're locked and sealed away. So to be able to do that, we teach you how basically to follow the Fibonacci sequence, because everything in nature has been created from the sequencing of numbers, the spiral pattern. This is the Fibonacci sequence, how our bodies were created, but also the patterning of how we age. So when we are in position, we don't move on the surface, but we teach you how to twist and turn, and you're following the pain, because pain equals adhesion. So pain basically becomes your roadmap, but it's not like we're adding pain to the body. We're making you aware of the pain that's deeper than what you're consciously aware of. And then as soon as you get in position, because the pressure fibers are larger than the pain fibers, suddenly that pain signal becomes like a good pain. And we teach you that your breath is your guide. Of course, we don't want to put people in situations where they're in so much pain that they can't heal in the proper way. And the rule is, as long as you're breathing in a relaxed way, you're feeding and healing the tissue. If anything hurts so much it takes that relaxed breath away, that's your body saying, nope, I'm not ready for this. And then we have alternate ways of allowing you to get deeper in through those layers over time.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a guided, almost like a guided self-massage in a way. And you talk about obviously decompression and how things get congested. What are your thoughts on like inversion tables or things that help to traction or open up discs, ligaments, different things like that?
I think they're wonderful. And in fact, when I was in my yoga teacher training, I remember reading, I think it was the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, where they said one of the best gifts we can give our body is to invert for up to 10 minutes a day, because all of the blood, especially in the head, it has to fight gravity to get there. So that inversion is a lovely thing. However, inversion alone isn't going to release those deep adhesions. So there's definitely benefit. But when you combine the fascia decompression with basically any other modality, then you're going to be able to get that energy, get that supplement nutrition or whatever it is to the cells that are lacking in the moment.